Stage 1 of the VCT EMEA League is coming up very soon, so it's time to take a look at all these teams and talk about how them and their fan bases are feeling heading into this next part of the season. With the two teams from this region that went to VCT Masters Bangkok having some pretty solid games but still ultimately falling short, this region is looking for their next trophy winner, so how is everybody feeling about their chances? So this is the board we have today. These are the panic rankings. We did this for Americas a couple days ago. So all the tiers are the exact same as that one, but to go over them again, at the very top we have Chad, so teams that are feeling really good about themselves right now, no complaints. Hopium is of course teams that have hope for the rest of the year. Copium is for teams that still have a bit of that hope, but maybe didn't get off to the best start. And Panic is pretty self-explanatory, and at the very bottom we have the Cursed Wojak, so you're down in the dumps. We will be going in alphabetical order, so starting it off we will be talking about Apex, and I don't think that there's a lot of other places to put them aside from the bottom. I do feel bad for Apex. They went through quite a bit of change in the offseason. They did pick up Floor, who has proven that she can be a top competitor in the VCT. I am hoping that Apex can have a good stage 1, especially now that they aren't dealing with the visa issues that they were before. But overall, even though this team has talent, it just doesn't look like they're going to be a very competitive team this year, which is a shame because this organization got 2 cracks at that Ascension Grand Final, losing the first one they were in and then winning the second one. So they finally get into the VCT after 2 years, but they still can't find a way to be competitive in it. So we'll see what they can pull together for the rest of the year, but for now, not really too confident in their chances, and I don't know if their fans are either. Moving on, we have BBL, and I think BBL is feeling pretty good about themselves, so I'm going to put them in Hopium. Definitely liked a lot of what I saw from BBL at kickoff. They were able to beat both Giant X and Fnatic at kickoff. They would go on then to lose to both Team Heretics and Team Liquid, but Heretics of course is a good team. They definitely fell short as well, but Team Liquid did also make it to Bangkok. So in terms of who you lost to, it's not the biggest deal in the world, and this team looked pretty dangerous in some of those matches. Definitely liked what I saw from Social Bull as well as Luen, and Yampi seems to be a pretty good IGL so far, which is something that I don't know how many people expected. So while Hopium might be a little bit too much for them, I still think fans of this team should feel pretty good about where they're standing right now, because this team, I think a lot of people expected them to be around the bottom. But so far they look like they could potentially be a top 5 team in the region. We will see how the rest of the year goes for them. Moving on, we have Fnatic, and I don't think I could put them anywhere that isn't Panic. It really does look like this team is in for a pretty rough 2025. Their kickoff did not go the way that they wanted it to. Losing to BBL, a match that should have been very favorable for them, and then going on to beat both Na'Vi and Gentle Mates. So they were starting to pick up momentum a little bit, but then they lose to Foot. And Foot's a really solid team as well, but that used to be a matchup that Fnatic could take almost every time. And of course today we had the news where Doom Bros, their new assistant coach, cannot make it to stage 1, at least not right at the start. It's due to health issues apparently, so that's very unfortunate. They have their new head coach in Milan, who was previously their assistant coach, so we'll see if he's an improvement over what they had before in Elma Putty. I think there's a very good chance he is an improvement, but this roster just does not look like what they used to be. I think losing Durka in the offseason definitely was an organizational decision, and I think it's turned out to be a really poor one. Kayak has had some good games now. He started kickoff pretty poorly, but then he slowly gained more confidence, and you could see that he was improving. So I can see that getting better for them, but the overall team, it just looks like a shadow of what this back-to-back trophy-winning team used to be. I definitely still think that they can be a strong team in the region, but in terms of making it to internationals and then contending to win them, I think that might be just a bit out of the reach this year, and I think fans are definitely starting to feel that. Moving on, we have Foot Esports, and I think they belong in the Copium section. Foot is a really curious team, a team that looks good enough sometimes to be able to be the best team in the region, but not able to find that consistency. They are at least consistently top 3, top 4 in EMEA over the past 2 years, but they haven't been able to reach that upper echelon. This should be a team that has enough talent to be able to qualify for the top spots in the region, but they've been able to fall short of that goal quite a bit now. And while there was only 2 spots per region at Bangkok, that was one that they definitely could have gotten. They lose to both Vitality and Team Liquid, so losing to the 2 teams that qualified for the international tournament, you could do worse than that. So I can't put them in Panic, but I don't feel like there was enough good things shown where I can put them in Hopium. But hey, maybe the Turkish fans are still quite high on this team. I'm still high on them as well. I just don't know if the hope is super high for this team. I think we're looking at a team that might end up doing doing the exact same that they've done for the past 2 years, which is good, not great. Moving on, we have one of the Ascension teams in Europe, and that is Gentle Mates. And I think a pretty fair place to put them is probably the Copium section here. Their kickoff overall wasn't super exciting, wasn't super terrible either. They beat both Apex and Koi. They lost to Team Heretics and Fnatic. They looked okay against Heretics. They did take a map off of Heretics in that match, but then lost the next two. And now we have the recent announcement that Robbie BK is off the roster, and now Kamek, formerly of Team Liquid, shocked that roster move happened, but he is going to Gentle Mates. So that definitely could be an upgrade for this team over Robbie BK. Robbie BK was definitely a fun player to watch, but at kickoff wasn't doing a whole lot. So making this move could definitely be a good decision overall, but I don't think that it propels them into like contender status for being the best in this region. I think they're going to be at most an okay team, so I think right around the middle, I think is probably where people have them. Don't think this team's going to qualify, but I don't think this team's going to be in the dumpster either, but we will see where it goes. Moving on, we have Giant X, and I think they're probably another Copium team. Definitely didn't have the most impressive kickoff, and I was thinking about putting them in Panic, but I think it's fair to just put them in Copium right now. They lose that first game against BBL, the team that they can't seem to beat. Then they head into that match against Carmine Corp, a team that had just come off of a loss to Team Vitality, but looked pretty good in that loss to Team Vitality. And then Giant X were able to beat them in that one. Then they go on to face Team Liquid, and they lose that one too. So they beat one team they were expected to lose against, but then they lost to two teams that they were probably expected to beat. And this roster does have some talented players on it, so looking at it on paper at kickoff, you were maybe hoping for them to get maybe top 5 or something like that. So ending up in 7th to 8th place isn't too far off of where expectations were, but still too early than you would have liked if you liked this team. So I think Copium is probably a fair place to put them for now. You could argue Panic, but I still think that it was just such a small sample size and it wasn't like the most spectacular losses ever. I will give them the benefit of the doubt and put them in Copium. However, when it comes to Team Heretics, it's a bit of a different story. This is a team that came off of back-to-back grand final losses at international tournaments, so heading into 2025, there was hope that this team could continue that strong play, but we have not seen it quite yet. I think for now, I'm going to put them in Panic. However, I think there's probably a bit of a divide in their fan base between Copium and Panic, but I'm putting them down in Panic because while they did get top 3 at kickoff, they looked really bad in their last 2 games of that tournament. They had 2 pretty easy matchups against Gentlemates and BBL, and still they were struggling in those ones. And then they lose 2-0 against Team Vitality, losing 13-1 on the final map. And then they lose 3-0 against Team Liquid in that lower final to qualify for Bangkok. And they got destroyed in that match, not winning more than 7 rounds in a map, and the other 2 were 4 rounds won for both map 1 and 2. So while you could say that maybe this team just needs a bit more time to get warmed up to the season, maybe they're a bit burnt out and demotivated from that Champions loss, I would imagine that would pretty much just destroy your morale, and maybe they just need a bit more time to cook. I'm hoping that that is what happened. I still think this team can be a contender to win tournaments. However, if you're going to do that, you have to look better than how you looked right now. It was abysmal performances at kickoff. Really hoping this team can bounce back, but I definitely am a little bit worried here. So I think Panic is at least fair for now. As for Carmine Corp, I think you could probably say the same thing. This is a team that spent big money to get some pretty big names in SADAC over the offseason, as well as Elite and Sugetsu. They kept Martine, they brought in Avaz as well. And then at kickoff, they look pretty solid against Na'Vi. They do end up winning that one. And then they go on to face Team Vitality. They make it pretty close, but they do end up losing that one. But hey, that's okay. That's just one match. Let's head on to the lower bracket and, hopefully we can continue that strong momentum. And that was not how it went for them. They lost to Giant X right after that, so their kickoff ended a lot earlier than people were expecting. I think there definitely should be a bit of panic around this roster right now. They still, on paper, should be a very good team, but I really don't know how this IGL coach mix is gonna go. Is Ain and Sadak a combination that can build a winning team together, or are their styles just a bit too different? I really don't know. Maybe you can put this team at Copium, but with where expectations were for this team, I think you should probably put them down here for now. Hopefully they can show some kind of skill. I think this team can be very good. So we'll see if they can pull themselves out of the slump that they ended up being in. Moving on, we have Koi, and yeah, it's probably down here with Apex, isn't it? It just looks like Koi is doomed to be the worst or one of the worst teams in the EMEA region year after year. They do have some players I'm hoping perform well, such as Flya, previously of MXS, so I want to see the remnants of that roster do well in their new homes. But yet again, this team looked pretty pedestrian in their own region. They did win a map in both games that they played, but they still ended up losing both of those matches, being one of the first teams out of kickoff. So it just looks like Koi just can't attract the superstar players that other teams can, and even if they get some solid pieces, the combination just doesn't end up working. It is still very early, we'll see how they do, but they haven't won a game in quite some time. It looks like this team might just be headed for deja vu. Moving on, we have Na'Vi, another team that went through a pretty big rebuild in the offseason, but so far has fallen pretty short of expectations. Ended up losing both matches at kickoff, and I think they're probably in the panic section. While they did have some close maps in those two losses that they had, they still lost both of them. They did almost get the win on Fnatic. They had an 11-5 lead on map 3, which was Haven, but then Fnatic just started to storm back, and Na'Vi just didn't have an answer. So right now they're having trouble holding leads, and overall the roster, while there's some talent there in Koala Noob as well as Hero, there doesn't seem to be something that's going to put this team into a better position than their roster of previous years would have. That was the 2022 FBX roster continued onto the Na'Vi organization. Not that that roster was, particularly better than this roster. I'm not saying that, it's still too early to call that, but they didn't do a ton of stuff on the Na'Vi organization. But so far this team just doesn't look like they have what it takes to bring this organization to glory that they're hoping for. This is an organization that's done very well in Counter-Strike. They're hoping to do it in this Valorant game, and I just don't know if this combination of new players plus 2 players from the old guard of the FPX roster is going to find the same success that they have in the past. I definitely think there should be a bit of panic right now, especially with how that Fnatic match went. So we'll see if they can learn from those mistakes. They do have 2 pretty young players in Hero and Koala Noob playing their first full year in Tier 1. So we'll see how their stage goes, but I'm not expecting this team to be very competitive, and I'm not sure if their fan base is either. Moving on, we have Team Liquid. Now, before a couple days ago, I honestly might have put them in Chad. Not that they had like the most insane performance at Bangkok, but they still made it there after not expecting to be even close to it. However, Team Liquid has just made a roster change. Kamek is no longer on the team, he's going to Gentle Mates, and now they have a new player called Serial coming in from Tier 2. So I think that probably bumps them down to the Hopium section because, again, this team still vastly exceeded the expectations for them, and Kamek wasn't exactly their superstar player, but he definitely had his good moments. I don't think losing him is going to be the biggest loss, but it all depends on how Serial does. Nats looks like he's in 2021 form, turning back the clock. Kiko, while his performance at Bangkok was a bit more down to earth as opposed to his kickoff performance, he still is a very good player, looking quite good. Patatek seems to be playing like regular Patatek, as aside from VCT Master Shanghai Patatek, but regular Patatek is still a pretty good player, so I don't know if this team is going to be a team that consistently makes it to internationals, or if they're going to be the Carmine Corp of last year, a team that made it to that first international of the year and then fell off pretty quickly after that. For Team Liquid fans, they're going to be hoping that they're the former and that this team is legit. I think they definitely have the potential to be, but I need to see a bit more. And last but certainly not least, we have Team Vitality, and there's really no other place to put them. You could argue with how Bangkok ended for them. I could bump them down to Hopium, but I don't think you really should be worried about this team right now. There is talk about internally this roster might not be getting along all that well, that maybe Trex and Safe just have different ways of looking at the game, but until they actually start looking like a bad team, I'm not going to believe that there's anything to be worried about with Team Vitality. They looked really good up until that match against G2, and they still performed decent. They just lost to one of the best teams in the world. And then they lost to T1, the team that won the whole thing, so I don't think there's a ton to be worried about right now. This team still went on a pretty impressive win streak to start the year, was broken at that Bangkok tournament, but they still looked like EMEA's best and maybe only chance to win a VCT international tournament this year. At least in terms of on paper, there's not too much of an argument against that, but we will see. There are some pretty good teams, at least on paper, that have fallen short so far. Looking at you, Team Heretics, don't make me look like a fool. Anyways, that's all I have to talk about today. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think of these rankings? Where would you put these teams? How are you personally feeling about your own team? Let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. Please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.